Good afternoon. I was told it was 2 o'clock, so we're going to get started so we can finish. Hi everyone, I'm John Weisner. I'm our Azure CDN lead for the Americas at Microsoft, working on our global black belt team. Manling Zhang, our Azure CDN product group program lead. We're going to go through a little bit today on Microsoft Azure, so thanks for committing some of the time. We'll do a little bit of a brief overview of Azure as a platform, what it is, what it isn't. I'm going to try to keep that brief so that we can go ahead and transition into Manling. But we're going to go a little bit deeper into Azure CDN and exactly what we're doing with Akamai and why we're here. So everyone in the room has felt, I think, what is now 52% of the S&P Corps since the year 2000 are now gone. And for those that remain, there is a heavy motivation to try to figure out how they digitally transform. And as part of that digital transformation, there are really these 4 key areas that Gartner and other analysts have been focusing on. And part of it is trying to tell everyone to engage their customers. I think we all know that, but how do we engage our customers in a digital transformational age? It's not just about customers, it's about the employees that work at our companies and how we provide them tools and applications that mix with their home lifestyle. How do we optimize the operations? How do we keep all these services working in a very loosely coupled, service-oriented type world? And not at the end of the day, but at the beginning of it and in a very mixed life cycle, how do we transform our products to be more consumable on demand in a very efficient production way and in a cost-efficient way? And a lot of this really is being driven by what the future is to bring. So Gartner's predicting back towards the year 2020, about 1 million devices coming online every hour. And that the S&P 500 company average life age is going to be 12 years. That's really a time where companies need to start to reinvent themselves again. And by 2025, about 60% of all the computing power in the world is going to be driven by public cloud. Those are some significant changes. So Microsoft is really focusing on 4 key areas with our public cloud offering called Microsoft Azure. It's in the productive, hybrid, intelligence, and trusted areas. I'm going to hit these really, really quick. From a productivity perspective, it's not just about our end users, it's about our developer community. So Microsoft has been changing. You may have been seeing some of the activity in the press lately. We are getting very heavily anchored again in what was once a development community that was very lively. I think that got decentralized for a period of time, and back today, there's a lot of energy around that area. Tools like Visual Studio are now integrated very heavily with Microsoft Azure. And it's not just Azure, it's our ability to look at the various products that we've been creating for use on-prem over the decades, and now in Azure. From a hybrid perspective, one of the key differentiators that we have from a cloud platform is our ability to have the products that we've been known for on-prem now be developed firsthand for Microsoft Azure, and the integration within the deep code to allow those things to run both on-prem and cloud. Active Directory, as an example, for identity, now has a sister product called Azure Active Directory. These 2 things work in concert with each other in a very seamless way. Things like Data Platform, which once was a focus around SQL Server, is now SQL Azure and a lot of the other data services that we have in Azure, but allow you to seamlessly move data from on-prem to cloud, from cloud to on-prem, and in a combined way be able to scale or burst or sync and so on. Azure Stack is a new offering that we have that allows you to take what is Microsoft Azure as a public cloud platform and all the resources that you can leverage from Microsoft's multi-billion-dollar investment across our data centers and combine that with the resources that you have internally within your own data center. In running Azure Stack, it allows you now to have your own private cloud integrated and combined with our Azure Public Cloud resources and allows you to manage those things across both. And then from a security and a management perspective, we have a lot of those tools as well that we provide a single pane of glass for you to run on. Intelligence. Satya Nadella, our CEO, had come out when we came into role. He talked about a cloud-first, mobile-first world. And that messaging has now really evolved into an intelligent cloud and intelligent edge. And a lot of that now is driven by our key focus in artificial intelligence and cognitive services. And the description that you hear a lot of folks from Microsoft talk about in terms of democratizing AI. Things around our bot framework offerings, data platform, AI compute, machine learning, all these are services that you have immediate access to within the Azure portal. These used to be really complex services that you had to stand up on really expensive infrastructure. They're now just a click away. Open a browser, log into Azure portal, start to pull these engines in, and you can start gaining a lot of value from them. Security. We pride ourselves on being a trusted cloud platform. When I started with Azure, geez, I'm at Microsoft almost 14 years now. When I started with Azure almost 7 years ago before it was Azure, we had like 1 or 2 of these things, and I've been watching this thing get populated over time. One of the ways that we really try to show our customers and drive comfort and confidence in Azure from a security perspective is by allowing Azure as a platform to be constantly audited and monitored by all these different certification methodologies. So it is constantly looking at all the different requirements across industry, across region, across different types of governments and so on. And so we have our customers come to us and say, you know, we trust in this certification or that certification or these compliance or these policies. We know if you've passed that certification, we can really trust Azure. A while back, a lot of people used to think about Microsoft as a bit of a vendor lock-in. Come to Microsoft, build your application on .NET. Come to Microsoft, run on Windows. Come run your database within SQL. There were a lot of things that were constraining. Microsoft has changed. By default, Microsoft is an open platform. We invite what was our highest competitors in terms of database, Oracle, right? IBM DB2. One of our biggest competitors from an OS perspective, Linux. The value around containerization, of being able to put your applications in a container and easily be able to pick them up out of Azure and put them in a competing cloud platform. Things that typically companies would not do. Competitors that companies typically would keep away and not embrace. Microsoft is now by default embracing all these companies, all these platforms, really to provide flexibility and choice for our customers. From a footprint perspective, Azure and its data center regions are deployed across 42 different points in the world. Each one of these regions is made up of a collection of data centers and infrastructure. One fun fact, if you take the whole AWS footprint, combine it with the whole Google footprint, that total aggregated infrastructure is still smaller than Microsoft Azure's total global footprint. So we're pretty spread. And across these data centers, we've got a Microsoft-owned network that connects all of these things so we can manage quality of service. All the infrastructure, all the services that we just talked about, over 90% of the Fortune 500 companies are customers of ours today. And we work with them in different ways. Everyone comes into Azure for different reasons. And once they're there, they start evolving their use into many different areas. And just to give you a quick snapshot, Azure is a very, very broad platform. This is actually a bit of a dated slide. But down here is all that data center region infrastructure I talked about, all our hardware. On top of it, infrastructure as a service. So for those of you who work with Azure, all our IaaS services are right down in here in terms of compute and storage and networking. For those of you who may use Amazon AWS or other IaaS platforms, that's where we have capabilities in line. Where Microsoft starts to differentiate is everything else above. All of our decades of work around security and management on the left side, everyone who uses Active Directory and who may now be using Azure Active Directory, who may be using things like multi-factor authentication, all the security and management capabilities that Microsoft has been building expertise on for decades is in Azure, over here on the left. On the right, hybrid cloud, I mentioned Azure Stack. So we really are doing a whole bunch of stuff around site recovery and different types of workloads. In the middle is our platform as a service offering, PaaS. For those of you who know a bit of the history with Azure, we started with PaaS. We originally didn't have IaaS. And in the beginning, while people were trying to figure out what cloud was, people were coming to Microsoft, they were going to Amazon, they were looking at what they needed to do. And the decision in the beginning wasn't necessarily to go Amazon or Microsoft. The decision in the beginning was, do I go IaaS or PaaS? And the market made their decision and chose to go IaaS. It mitigated a lot of risk. It provided a lot of baby steps into cloud. Microsoft still feels that PaaS is the most efficient area within cloud where you gain the greatest cost and operational efficiencies. And we continue to build services in these areas. And one example is if you needed to build out a database within infrastructure as a service, you'd have to deploy a virtual machine, you'd have to install an OS and pay for it, you'd have to install your database server and pay for it, and then maybe after configuring it and after continuing to own all that management and maintenance of that stack, then you can get to that table within the database that you needed to use for a business purpose. In our data as a service, in our PaaS layer, you can get a table as a service and essentially pay per minute without having to own the infrastructure, the maintenance, and so on. All the media services that we have allow you to come in our Azure Media Services layer, allow you to go directly and start encoding and transcoding. We have our machine learning there. We have media indexing there. We've got a bunch of our AI there and so on. So these are just capabilities where you come in and you say, this is the specific requirement I have. Here's what I need to process. And on the other side of it, we essentially provide you an engine to go do it. When you look at all these different services, these are things that Microsoft takes a lot of pride in providing quality of service in within the context of the Azure Data Center. But once a bit of data leaves the front door of the Azure Data Center and hits the internet, we really haven't been able to touch it or control it. So with that, I'm going to transfer over here to Man Ling. And we're going to speak to you a little bit about how we're starting to optimize delivery over the internet in combination with our services in Azure.
Thank you, John. So this is a great slide showing you the richness of capabilities that Microsoft Azure provides. But as a developer, it's not always the easiest to get started with, right? So you can learn everything as a developer, but instead, we can also look at three-step approach to get started with Microsoft Azure. So first, you want to identify your scenario. You are the focus. The customer's requirement is the focus. What is the scenario that you try to achieve? What is the business goal? And the second is architect a solution based on the scenario that you have, and then move on to the deployment. For a scenario, for example, you can have a digital marketing apps. You can have digital media, live streaming, video on demand. You can look at monitoring. You can look at gaming. So if you are not sure what category that you follow, then you can go to the azure.com where it shows a list of all the solutions or scenarios that are relevant to customers and choose from there. So once you start with the scenario, then you can move on to the solution. So this is just two examples of a digital media. There's live streaming digital media, there's video on demand, and each have different architecture based on the scenario. And you can start with something very simple. Just add an app, and then add a traffic manager, for example, add a CDN for the performance, or you can go to complex with the scalability, performance, so anything you need depends on the scenario you have. Then you move on to the deployment. So there's the Azure portal, very easy to use. There's also all kinds of developer tools and SDKs. If you don't find the language you need, you can always use the Swagger to translate to the language that you need. So every single service available in Microsoft will be providing these developer tools and then SDKs. And we also have ARM template, Azure Resource Management. Every service in Azure is a resource, and you can put that in a template to create these services automatically together. So if you have a range of web applications you need to build, then you can definitely use the templates, which is the easiest way. So moving on to talk about Azure CDN. So Azure CDN is a multi-CDN platform that gives you flexibility, gives you choice. Today, we work with two providers. We work with Akamai and Verizon. We look at these four categories. These are the benefits of using Azure CDN. So first is we're a multi-CDN platform through which you can enable different providers and with different features you need. And then we offer very ease of use. There's APIs for everything we expose from the portal, from the APIs, and then you can also turn on and off on demand. The next one is a deep integration. So as Azure CDN, we're not really looking at replicating what our CDN providers do. So our CDN providers are the CDN infrastructure providers. So they provide, we can leverage their POP locations, their performance, everything. But we look at, as Azure CDN, we look at what makes sense and strategic to our Azure customers, what we think they need, and then we will build a solution on top of our providers. So we have very deep integration with our other Azure services like Azure Storage, Azure Web App, which I'm going to show you some demo. And then it's just a few clicks to activate. And the last but not least is the simplicity. So it's pay-as-you-go model. There's no commitment. It's all fall under Azure agreement. There's no additional contract. There's a single support interface. Go through the Microsoft Azure support. Then we'll take her from there. And then from the CDN offering today, as I mentioned, we have different category. The main point here is from the Azure CDN platform, through which you can choose what fits your need. So let's specifically talk about Azure CDN from Akamai. So with Azure CDN from Akamai, of course, all the things we talked about earlier will apply to Akamai. And then the partnership started about 2 years ago, and then we see a lot of integration and a lot of engineering interactions with them. And then you see that there's following under existing Azure agreement. It's pay-as-you-go model, as I mentioned. It's usage-based only. We're only going to charge you the GB base. There's no overage. And then there's also combining the Azure and non-Azure data centers. So you can, of course, use Azure CDN with the Azure data centers, Azure solutions. At the same time, you can also just enable Azure CDN with other workflows, other cloud providers you are using today. And then today, I'm going to show you how to deploy a CDN, a running CDN, within 1 minute. So let's move on to the demo. For my demo purpose, I would like to set up a scenario. So my scenario is that, because I'm a new mom, so I want to share my photos, my baby photos, with the world. I'm not sure if I should do that, but that's my plan today. And the solution I'm going to use is the storage. So I mentioned about Azure Storage, which is the foundation of Azure. So it's a great way to put your images, static files. It's very scalable. So I'm going to use that to store my files, my videos, my images. And then I'm going to add Azure CDN for fast delivery. And I'm going to use Akamai for that. The deployment today, I'm going to use Azure Portal. Just to prepare, I have set up some domains. So the first domain I set it up is the baby photo blob.core.windows.net, which is the Microsoft Azure Storage blob URL. So I will talk how to create that, but I have that ready. So my files are already in the Azure Storage. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create now a CDN endpoint pointing to that storage, and then a custom domain that I already mapped with GoDaddy from the custom domain to my CDN endpoint. Just ignore this dusty dog pet care. Just not for my baby, but you know, I had a dog before, and then they're also my baby, so apply. And then normally, well, if everything goes correctly, I should be able to click these URLs and everything should be running, right? So that's what I'm going to show you today. Now, I'm going to go to my Azure portal. Give me 1 second, let me just present. All right. Oops. Great. So this is my Azure portal. You just go to portal.azure.com. You first will land into a dashboard. Before you get to this portal, first thing you need is a subscription with Microsoft Azure. So once you have that subscription, you can then subscribe services for your need. So this dashboard is very customizable. So I customize based on my own presentations I did or things that I would like to get into all the time. And you can see from the left side there is a list of services. So usually the first step you go is create new. And then from this view, you will see a lot of services that are grouping into different categories. So to start with the blob, the Azure storage blob, what you can do is go to the storage, or simply go to the storage here, and this is the storage account that you are going to create. So as I mentioned earlier, I already have that configured. So in the storage account, you basically will be putting a custom domain, a domain for the storage, and then choose just follow the instruction here. It's pre-filled with a lot of the information you have, and then you can add a new resource. Like I mentioned, everything Azure is a resource, so you can combine this resource into a single resource group, so that you can easily refer to later on. You can add to the existing or create new here. And that's it. So I'm not going to go over the create storage account. Instead, I'm going back to my dashboard and go to one that I already created, which is my baby photo storage account. So in this storage account, once you have that created, the blobs, which is the object container, then you will be creating a container and then start putting your photo and images up there. So I did create a container, and then it's called 2017. And then I have a bunch of images here. To upload the image is very simple. You basically just upload a blob and then search locally from a file that you have, and then you can just put it up there. And it's very fast. It's pretty much immediate, actually. So since I already have these files ready, I now can just go to one of the file that I have and copy paste. If I go, I should see that it's already existed. All right, so this is one of the baby photos that I put in my storage, and I now want to add my CDN to make this super fast, right? Okay, so now let me go back to my storage. This is the storage account, and then I search for Azure CDN, or simply just browse and to Azure CDN. As you see, I didn't leave the Microsoft storage account. I'm in their experience. So from here, when you click the Azure CDN, it will show you a couple of steps to fill out a CDN and just create a CDN on the fly. Another way is to go to create new and find CDN over there, which we will go over. So now, as you see, I can enable CDN. I don't have any CDN yet with this storage available. And then I can create new profile, which will be selecting a pricing tier. And because I did a quick trial before, so it memorized what I choose from the previous creation. So I didn't even select anything, but it says standard Akamai automatically because of my previous selection. And all I need to do actually is to customize the baby photo, put the name of the endpoint that I need. And here we're going to check whether this name is available to use. It's unique endpoint across all the customers. So once I fill that out, I'm going to create that. Earlier, I created a baby photo too, just to have a trial. But now I'm creating babyphoto.azure.net. So while this is running, as you see, you get a notification, and then you can always check back to see the status of it. And then while it's configuring, let me show you the other way to get to the CDN. So when you go to the More services here, just click that. You can see every service, the 70+ service that Microsoft Azure has, and then you can just filter with the CDN profile. So when you choose the CDN profile, one trick is you can add a star, which will be adding to your left side navigation. So you don't need to come back every time you need to search for CDN, and then just click that. So once I come to the Azure CDN profile, this is going to show me all the profiles available under my subscription. And then you can start from there. So this is when you already have a workflow. You don't need a storage account. You don't need a web app. You just want to enable CDN. You can start from here. So during the meantime, I already successfully created my CDN endpoint. Let's see. Let me go back to my baby photo. So it's still loading here. So what it should show you basically are the endpoints you just created. While it's waiting, we can actually find another way to access it, which is going directly to the CDN that I created. All right, so I find my baby photo profile. It's under another subscription I have, and I have a running Azure CDN endpoint. So let's check this out. So babyphoto.azure.net is the one that I just created, and this is the blob, the image from the blob, and then if I copy and paste that to here, which let me do that, or just type, actually it's easier. It's babyphoto.azure.net/ I'm seeing a running Azure CDN from Akamai endpoint within 1 minute. So that's all it takes for you to enable CDN. So once I have this, the next step for me is I want a custom domain. So this is the endpoint that CDN will provide to you. If you remember from here, I have a babyphoto.dustydogpetcare.us. This is my domain that I want to use for my images. Then I can now start adding this to my to my endpoint. So this is where you do. So you add a custom domain. Let me copy that. So when you add a custom domain, we'll be checking this CDN mapping. So with the GoDaddy or the domain registration, you need to do the CNAME mapping from that domain to the CDN endpoint. So I already pre-configured that. What I should see is the babyphoto.dustydogpetcare.us CNAMEd to the CDN endpoint. And we're going to check that. Usually it takes much faster than this for the validation. I think there's some internet issue here. So while it's validating, we can come back here. A couple of tricks basically using this portal. So if you don't like the color, of course, you just double click to change it. You can also customize basically the dashboard as you need. You can ping any resource to the dashboard so that you can refer back later on. Looks like it's still validating, and let me do that again. Okay, so now it's checked. I had a space here, so that's why it's still loading. So you shouldn't have any space. And once you do that, and you just add it to the CDN endpoint. So after this is done, I should be able to access now my images through my Dusty domain photo. So let's wait for a few seconds so that we can do that. Let me just get that ready and copy that. One thing I would like to mention is we have the custom domain HPS, which is a very important feature for lots of customers. So today, we're still working with Verizon Akamai to support that, but with Verizon today, you can enable with few clicks, and then we're going to look at also Akamai supporting the same thing. Now I have my custom domain ready, and then I come back here and just replace my URL with that. And the reason it's not showing is because I don't have HPS supported yet, right? So now let me just remove this, and it's showing that. And Verizon today, you just basically go through the steps that we have here to enable custom domain HPS, and then you will be able to use HPS directly. And then for that, I want to give a quick demo and how you do that. So if I have a Verizon account, I can go to one of the two that I created in advance. So if I go to the demo called Baby Photo Verizon Demo, you see the custom domain HPS is disabled. So if I click that, it's one click to enable the HPS. That's it. There's one thing you need to do. So if you look at this, there's 4 steps. One is submitting the request. So this request will be submitting to the backend to the provider. And then you go through the domain validation, which is using the email. But later on, we are going to do also automatic approval. So if your custom domain is already mapped to the CDN endpoint, it will be automatically approve that. So literally, it will be one click. But for now, you still need to go through the email. And then third step will be just waiting for certificate provision and then complete. So from here, you don't need to do any certificate management. We're going to handle all the certificate. It's going to be a shared sense certificate shared across all of our customers. There's no additional fee for HPS. It's same GB rate as you pay for HTTP. And then the rest is exactly the same as HTTP. So this is the feature that I want to show that will be available soon with Akamai. The other thing I want to quickly mention is the dynamic site acceleration. So as you know, as an Akamai member or customers, so you have the ICA, which is what Akamai called for their platform. Now with Azure CDN, since our goal is not really to have one-to-one mapping from Akamai products to Azure CDN products, we want to focus on the scenario, again, focus on the scenario of Azure customers. So when you create a CDN endpoint, there's one question we will ask you, which is what do you want to optimize for? So if we are with Akamai today, and then click create an endpoint, there are a couple of options here. So you can optimize for general web delivery, which is the one that I would use usually for websites with a lot of static images. And you can also do general media streaming optimization. So you have live and on-demand with the same endpoint. You can use that. You can use the video on demand streaming, and then you can use large file, and then dynamic site acceleration. So a lot of things you spend right now, understanding a lot of questions you need to answer. It's just one question from our side. And then you just need to provide a probe path for the DSA, and that's it, to enable a running dynamic site acceleration endpoint on Akamai. So I'm not going to show off that today, and instead, I would like to invite you to just go try the Azure portal, and it's right there and available for you. Sign up for a subscription, and then you can just play out. Again, it's pay as you go, so you don't need any contract to get started, and then that's it. So let me go back to the PPT. The last thing we would like to mention is there are a lot of resources available. So today we have a booth over there. At 4 p.m., we have another session talking about building your fast-performing web application with Microsoft Azure. So in that session, we're going to have step-by-step creating an application using web app, showing off some of the WordPress integration with web app, and then building that with Azure CDN. So we have that session available at 4 p.m. And you can always reach out to John and myself, and then we have a lot of team members today here, and then we'll be presenting at the booth. And you can also go to the Azure resources to learn more about Azure CDN. With that said, thank you very much.